Hey, everybody, welcome back to Illuminating Leadership, where we share the stories and experiences of industry and community leaders from around the globe. As always, I'm your host and leadership coach, Beth Johnson. Hey, everybody, welcome back. I am here today with my guest, Sebastian Kollner. Now, that's the American version, not the German version. Chief Mindsetter, aka Mental Plumber. Or said another way, the guy who helps you manage your internal board of directors and gets you leading yourself first. Sebastian, welcome.
Hi there. And the German version would be Sebastian Kölner, but it's just a tongue breaker for the Americans. And since I have both passports, either goes.
It sounds so much better the way you say it. Well, do tell Sebastian, what on earth is a mental plumber?
It's going to get a little graphic, right? So
I hope it does.
Yes. So let's do the boardroom savvy version first, okay? Why chief mindsetter? Because mindset is actually a misnomer when you think about it, seeing how it's not set. So I turned that into the more active version of actually creating your mindset, okay? Perfect. And then a little while back, I asked a client of mine as she accepted the offer and said yes. I usually slow down a bit and challenge the yes. So I asked her, so tell me, this was the second call we were on, tell me what had you decide to get to a hell yes, you want to work with me? And she goes, well, I wasn't going to tell you this, but now that you've asked, one of the toilets in my house has been plugged up for the last week. And first I went and did the usual, right? Poured Drano and chemicals down and didn't do anything. Then I got myself a cheap, like windy tool and tried, and that didn't do anything today. And between our two calls this morning, I finally broke down, went to the hardware store, got a semi-professional tool, got the training, did some more YouTube videos on how to use it, and it finally worked. Right? This was the last thing before I was going to call a plumber. And she goes, and as my toilet was finally unclogged and cleaning itself, it hit me, she says, that's why I need you. I'm clogged up mentally, and I need your tools and your expertise to unclog my mental shit so that, one, I can get back into flow and build my business and create the flow of impact and income I want to generate. And I was sitting there with tears in my eyes, almost laughing, and I said, I'm definitely going to quote this everywhere I go from here on out. Do you mind if I attach your name to it? She's like, I'd rather not, see how it's graphic. I'm like, all right, fine. I'll just take it, steal it. I'll just give credit to an anonymous client. But it's just a fantastic analogy and one of the best ones I've heard in a long time for what I actually do, right? I help you unclog your mental issues, your mental stuff, let's call it. All right, so that you can actually get back into flow and create the impact, the income, the best version of yourself that you're after.
Now, you work with coaches like myself, which is how you and I met, entrepreneurs and executives. And as you said, you deal with that, you help them deal with their mental shit. We're going to say it, right? To get out of their own way. So, if someone's listening going, yeah, my mind is clogged and I need Sebastian, right? What could they expect? How do you start that process? Because there's a lot of unclogging to do for most of us.
I think there's a very simple, how do we start this, right? If you feel like there is an area in your life or two where you look around and you say, you know what, I really don't like what I'm seeing. And I know I can do more. And I actually even probably have an idea of what I should do, but I can't get myself to do it. Yeah. Right. And maybe this has been going on for weeks. In some cases, this has been going on for years. I mean, in my own case, it's been going on for decades, but that's another part of it. And so it really starts there. Where are you at? And what do you actually want? And it's often the first challenge, right? Admitting what we actually want, because we gotten ourselves set in where we're at. One is because we're hardwired to favor the status quo. That's just how the mind works. It's safe. It keeps you alive. And the other is we can't really have two conflicting thoughts at the same time. So if I'm not taking action, then I must find a way to be okay with the way things are. And one of the meanest parts about all of this is if you're running your own company, if you're a leader in an organization, financially, you're probably reasonably comfortable, right? You probably have ticked off all kinds of boxes when it comes to toys, the house, and all those things. So there is a lot of comfort there. And it is this extra step of actually getting real with yourself and acknowledging, and where is that comfortable misery, right? Where is it, yes, comfortable, but it's really not where you want to be.
What did you
Not
call
where we
it? Comfortable misery?
comfortable misery. Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
That's what I looked at before I became a coach, right? I had the six-figure income, I had the job, I had the house, I had the family, and a part of me said, "Why? So, right? I ticked off all the boxes. I'm supposed to be happy.
Why
So
am
why
I
am
not
I not?
happy? Yeah.
Why am I not? Right? Why am I good at my job, but it's kind of sort of like almost coasting, right? Why do I come home and I'm drained? Why? The breaking point for me that really hit home that something is off is I have a third child on the way, and I'm not excited about having another child.
Mm.
So that's when I really looked at what's going on. And this to me is my version of comfortable misery. From the outside looking in, I had it all, but I felt miserable inside. And there was a lot of energy going into maintaining that mask, projecting that, right, what was going on, setting goals and being relentless about pursuing them, but still feeling like something is just putting in place. And what I've learned in my own journey is we all have our own defense mechanisms that are protecting us from, let's put it simply, getting emotionally hurt. And whether you had a traumatic childhood or not, we all had disappointments and experiences growing up. And yeah, those don't feel good, but now our brain doesn't know that they're going to kill us. But anything that is pain is potentially life-threatening to our brain. So we develop defense mechanisms, right? You break your arm, you put it in a cast, 6 weeks or so later, the cast comes off, you go to physical therapy. A year later, you might still remember you broke your arm. 3 years later, as a kid, you don't even know what happened anymore. You break something up here, like have an emotional wound or hurt, you also put a cast around that. Just that nobody ever teaches you how to take that cast back off.
Well,
And
nobody
how
ever
you,
taught us that we had the cast on there to begin with, right? I think a lot of times we just thought it was normal. And then the next question that follows is, what's wrong with me?
and in the context of that growing up, that's the only logical conclusion you can
Right?
draw from it, often case, right? Now, that is not where I start with my clients. Where I start with my clients is saying, look, you have your strong suits, whatever that is. Some of us are really driven, some of us are really detail oriented, some of us are really intuitive about knowing what others need. Okay, those casts, those protective mechanisms, you intuitively went to your greatest strengths. So if you have an inner drive to, say, achieve, right, then you're going for achievement in order to get whatever you were missing, right? Whatever that hole is, you're trying to fill it with. So if we look at, oh yeah, you've hit all your goals, but do you actually pause? And can you actually enjoy it? Or you're already off to the next one? Or do you already talk yourself down and say, well, if I could have done it, any bum of the street might have done a better job than I could have, right?
Right.
So where I start with my clients is whatever got you here isn't going to get you to the next level. It's actually what's getting in your way, right? It's that being driven. It's following those same patterns. And oftentimes it's following stories that the one or the other character in your head has made up about how the world works, what you can and cannot do, what other people do, and when, and this is the most insidious one, when you will be happy,
Right?
when you will have enough money, when, right? I will be happy when. I will, retire when. I will spend more time with my children when. Have you ever noticed how when you get close to that line, the goalpost moves,
Mhm.
right?
And you still don't feel that happy. Knowing that it's on the horizon, the happiness still eludes you.
Right. So the starting point though is to say, okay, I'm tired of playing this game, right? And I don't really mind whether you come from a personal issue or you come from a business issue, because really you don't have a business problem. You have a personal problem that shows up in your business. I was going to say, does that mean you need to know what your problem is? No, you don't, because I know that whatever you say the problem is, isn't going to be the problem we're going to end up working on, right? It's if whatever you're aware of is at a surface level, where if you've gotten that far, chances are you've done a lot of reflection, you've done a lot of work, and I don't want to discredit that, but the level of awareness you come in with isn't going to be the level of awareness we're going to work on. Okay. So no, you don't have to know what the actual issue is. That's my job to help you figure that out. What I'm looking for is, though, are you motivated to do something about it? Right? Because I don't promise anyone a silver bullet, and I don't really take responsibility for your results. But here's one promise I can make you. If you're working with someone like me, it's going to get uncomfortable. And here's why. If you want to stay in your comfort zone, then make your peace with whatever is frustrating you, let it go, and stay there. No judgment here, right? That's your choice. But if you want to get to the next level, growth happens outside of your comfort zone, and you will always feel afraid. And anyone who tells you they aren't, they're lying.
It's bunk. It is absolute BS from the front line to the CEO to the home life. Every single one of us is afraid of something, and it is the most beautiful thing to watch someone say, okay, yeah, I am, and I am willing, and I'm tired of the same old, let's get uncomfortable. What's been your most complex client, if I may?
See, I've worked with a coach. What was an interesting challenge maybe is I've worked with a coach who had built a 7-figure business previously in a different industry by herself. Okay. So there was no excuse. There's no like, oh, I don't know how to do business. There's no like, I need to learn this, I need to learn that when it comes to building a business. She had done it. All right. And here she was in a working with me because she was stuck right at the 5-figure a month mark, which is not quite yet even a 6-figure business. Right. And she goes, I know how to build a 7-figure business. Why am I not doing the things I know to do? Right. And when we looked at, okay, what's going on? Let's really lean into that. And there's a lot of that goes into working with both the mind, but also with the body. Like, what are you feeling? What are you present to? Right. All those things. And then what we unlocked is this story. At the height of her previous business, her husband walked out on her in the marriage, claiming her business was more important to her than their relationship. To then turn around and sue her for every dime of that business. And that divorce battle was still going on 5 years later. 3 weeks after her husband walked out on her, her mom suffered a stroke and passed. And in a very emotional realization, she got to the story that stuck with her that doesn't make sense, but was emotionally charged and was running. Everything she did was, if I'm successful financially, it hurts my relationship and might even hurt the people I love. She wasn't sabotaging herself. Nobody ever is, but she was loyal to a value that was way more important than building a successful business, right? Giving this conflict, if you have to choose, what are you going to choose? Not your business over your relationship. Once you realize that, and we could work on healing that and letting it go, she put the foot to the metal, went off. And now I take pages out of her playbook for how to build a business because she knows how to build a business.
That's
right?
amazing.
So that might be my favorite story when you look for sort of complexity, because it shows the power of those stories when you're not aware of them.
Well, and isn't it true that we can't see those stories for ourselves? I mean, that's the role of a coach, right? To ask those, we might intuit it, we might feel it, we know something's off, we know something's wrong, but we're not able, like she was, not able to put 2 and 2 together because she's holding on to the story so strongly and knows that people are more valuable than my business.
Beth, and this is, when people ask, do you need a coach? No, I don't think you do. Right? I think if you can get there with journaling, and there's ways, right, that we as coaches do that, you could apply those things yourself. Okay. So I wouldn't go as far as to say you can't do this for yourself.
Right.
But the question is, why do I need a coach, or why do I want a coach? Well, why do top performers in business as well as in sports have multiple coaches? Because If you want to get there faster, and if you want to go deeper, then a coach will certainly help, right? Because there's something about somebody helping you shine a light on your blind spots. And there's something else that I think a good coach will do. I refer to the work I do as creating the brave space, not the safe space, the brave space for you to remember who you truly are. Brave as in, yes, it's going to be safe. There's no judgment, right? There's respect. I'm holding the space for you. And it's a brave space because it's not my job to keep you comfortable. It's my job to figure out what you're shying away from and standing in your courage to actually go there, to take that step and lean in. I believe my clients already know what's going on. I help you step into that
uncover it, exactly,
and connect with the part of you that already knows.
Now, you're speaking to leadership, right? And I'm thinking of let's say our mid-management, all the way to C-suite.
Mm-hmm.
Can I effectively lead others before I have learned to lead myself? And that's a very broad question because I'm so interested in your answer.
It's also a bit of a leading question, right? But
I tend to do that every once in a while.
Exactly. So here's the experience I speak from, right? One is my own experience working for 15 or so years in leadership positions in various organizations, and coaching with executives for a larger insurance conglomerate over here in Germany, which is exactly this mid-level, like starting to lead all the way to senior executives, right? And one of the themes that I find there is often around having those tough conversations, right? Giving effective negative feedback, giving effective positive feedback seems to be one of those common themes, okay? Now, I've seen very few organizations that have a level of maturity when it comes to the feedback culture, right? That only people who are comfortable with it
right.
So this is a common theme. And I think this exemplifies the point you're looking for. Can I give feedback? Sure, I can. Right? All I got to do is go do that. Can I learn the mechanics of giving good feedback? And we don't want to get too technical here, but no, it's not a sandwich that you want to hand out. I believe if you have to give positive feedback, you do it right then and there in front of everybody. If you have to give negative feedback, you don't have to sugarcoat it, because if you give positive feedback often enough, you can just get to, hey, here's what I observed. This is how it's impacted me and how I feel about it. And here's my request for you going forward. Okay. Can you learn that technically? Yes. And here comes the but. But if you're a people pleaser who's worried about how the other person is going to feel, you're just going to freeze, right? If you are just a matter of fact, just hampered by your hyper rational approach to everything and all this touchy feely stuff, right? Then that's how you're gonna give it. So when you figure out your triggers, when you know who you are, right? Then you can be authentic, vulnerable in the conversation, can actually be in touch with, well, how do I feel about it? Can actually communicate that in a way that doesn't put blame on the other person. It simply says, hey, this is how I feel about it, right? And stand in that conversation. But we all have our own experiences, our own stories of what happened, and why our situation is special. The fact that you feel like you're the only one struggling with it, or your situation is special or particular, and all of that makes you the same as everybody else.
That is one of the greatest revelations I ever had early on, which is you're not alone. You're not isolated. Every single person has a fear of some sort. And I have my own list. Like I have about four common fears that people have. I'd love to hear, what you've uncovered in your coaching.
The corollary of rejection, I think those are very common because it's innate. It's It's hardwired into us because there was a time when leaving the tribe was a death sentence.
Right.
Okay. Now, those parts are all there. Our brain just hasn't caught on to the fact that, well, it's not fun to be all by yourself. Well, you're not going to starve to death and you're not going to freeze to death anymore in this day and age, right? But so it's still all there. That's very common. I can speak particularly to maybe a few that a lot of the achievers can relate to, right? When you're striving for doing things really well and perfect, what you might be aware of is your fear of failure, which when you dig deeper comes back to shame, comes back to rejection, comes back to, right, being ostracized. Right? What's not quite so apparent is if you have a strong drive to achieve, there's often also a fear of success.
Explain that a little bit more.
Well, one, because when I actually get there, then what? Because I define myself over the drive. I define myself over the striving for it, right? And most importantly, if I actually get there and again don't feel fulfilled or satisfied, then, pardon my French, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Right? Because as long as something unhealthy drives me to get there, there's a problem. And then lastly, very often with that goes a fear of strong emotions. And you talked earlier about, right, how can I lead others when I can't lead myself? Unless you have access. And okay, full disclosure, this is coming from the guy who, if you've met me in my 20s, I would have said, I don't have emotions.
Right.
And that's what makes me good, right? That's why I hit my goals and achieve and go there. And you would have said, Sebastian, everybody has emotions. I would have said, no, I don't effing have them. And it would have been true because my reality was everything below the neckline was just cut off. By now I have this image of I had created a dungeon 7 layers down with iron chains and 7 locks in front of it. And this is where everything emotionally got just locked up. Okay, so I didn't have emotions because I locked them away. The thing with that is, if you distance yourself from your negative emotions, whatever you perceive to be negative ones, you also stop feeling positive emotions, right? You can't selectively disconnect from your emotions. And when you do disconnect from your emotions, energy in motion, it takes additional energy to keep this under lock and key, okay? You don't have the information available from your emotions and you extend all this energy on trying to keep it under wraps and trying to keep it together. All of that is energy that is not available for performing, for connecting, for being present, okay? And people notice because you can't be authentic when you're not, right? When you're not in touch with your emotions. That, think about the best leaders that you've encountered, somebody you admire. Chances are they were present, they were able to have empathy for what you're going through, and chances are they were openly sharing how they were feeling, building trust and building a genuine connection. And you can only do that when you've done whatever work it is for you to lead yourself in that process.
Everything you just said plays so much into the way I've been working with my clients. Here, anyway, there's an engagement issue. Lots of people are disengaging post-pandemic. They're tired of being treated a certain way. They got used to working from home, label it the way you want. But when you talk to the employees themselves, they will say, I'm not connected because my leadership's not connected. And that's not a full-on excuse, right? I'm talking about the group of people, not the 2%ers who are always going to victimize themselves. I'm talking about the people who've been putting in the hours and the time and following a career path, and all of a sudden their eyes are opened and they either sense something, feel it, see it in their leadership that's not authentic, that's not there for them, that's not present, that's dictatorial, that's people pleasing, and they're done, right? And so I'm going to put in my time and I'm going to go home. What's a leader's role in re-engaging someone?
Here's what I think it's not. I don't think it's the leader's job to motivate someone, but you didn't use that term. I'm just real clear on that distinction. I also don't think you need to motivate anyone because intrinsically, right, most of us have a reason for showing up.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep. So the examples that you're sharing show what bad leadership will do, and that is you actually demotivate them, right? You actually cover up what is there. It's simple, but not easy. It's one of those classic things. When you care about the person and show a genuine interest, that's engaging, right? That's actually building the relationship. Where, I don't know, this research has been around for what, 30 years now? It might be even longer, because it's been a while since I went to university. This whole thing is like people who are engaged, people who are loyal, people who are staying and are happy at work. What's the most important criterion they have? I have a best friend at work, right?
That has remained the same now. I agree, for 30, 40
Exactly,
years.
right?
Hasn't changed.
You know, and with all the artificial intelligence and everything out there, whatever business you're in, you're still in a people business. I mean, for me as a coach, it's kind of obvious, right? But no matter what business you're in. So if you don't like what you're doing, then find something that's more aligned.
Do everybody else a favor, right? Because it's harming yourself, your team, your company, the whole thing.
Right. Now, thankfully for me, where I coach, I usually work with leaders who are open to coaching because they do care. Because right, they're there and they want to get to the next level. So the other thing I usually work on is appreciative inquiry, right? We're so fast to look at what's not going well, what could be improved, what, right? Pause and actually acknowledge what's going well. If you're in a, and this is why I'm saying there's not a single answer. If you're in like an environment with a lot of change, then yes, your job is to lead and manage the change. And a big part of that is to also sit down with your team and say, hey, I know the world is changing and faster than ever, but hey, what's going to stay the same? Right? It's those things. You can have your own style. And here's why I'm kind of glad that I'm a coach and not a consultant. I don't have to give the leaders I work with the answers.
Right.
I help them trust themselves to follow the answer they already have. Because I don't know your team. I don't know your business, and I don't have to. You know, there's just something getting in your way of doing what you know, right? And that's what I help you remove. It's this, what's between you and doing what you know to do.
And most of your clients are receptive to that because they were receptive to coaching to begin with.
Maybe. The other thing is, like with the larger company that I work with, they have an internal pool and a platform, and you put a little video there. And my video says, basically, if you want to coach, please swipe right because I'm not your coach. Nice. Right? But if you're willing to get uncomfortable, we've had this earlier, if you're willing to take a look at, hey, what other stories appear? If you're looking for someone to push you and push you hard, I'd love to have a conversation.
Well, isn't that the irony? Because most of your, let's look at your senior leadership. Most of them like to be pushed hard. I worked for a couple who didn't. They wanted the yes people, but most that's in part of their DNA, right?
Yeah.
Yet they also learned or were taught or somewhere it's been it's in their mind that to divulge too much of myself is scary or inappropriate or weak, right? How do you work with those folks? If there's a leader listening today that says, oh shit, yeah, I mean, there's something getting in my way, but oh no, I can't. This vulnerable talk is ridiculous. This emotion talk is ridiculous.
Right. Well, here's what you have working against you when you're in that situation. You've followed a certain pattern of achieving and accomplishing and getting there, and the higher up you get, the more you initially feel like you have to lose. Right? So that's where your success is actually working against you, right? Where you've spent a lot of time inadvertently building that image and projecting that image. Okay. And here's why I can hold that space for my clients who go through that, because my version of that is, I mentioned how I said I didn't have emotions and all of that. Like for me, before I could really be a coach, I had my own stuff to work through. And I know that when it was a guided meditation that had nothing to do with anything really, but at the end of it, out of nowhere, I connected to memories from like early childhood before I even had words. And the guy who didn't have emotion was, I was lying on my living room floor, bawling my ass out. Okay. And when I got up and went to the bathroom, two things happened. One is I realized, wow, this is powerful. And somehow, right, I want to keep going, because in the mirror for the first time, I actually recognized myself. This is weird to even say, as myself rather than this familiar stranger's guy's face that I was shaving every day.
Yeah.
Okay. And still I was hesitant because I'd been holding it together. I knew there was stuff down there. I know there was stuff I was scared of. I know there was stuff I hadn't dealt with, but I was holding it together. What if I went there, it broke me, and I couldn't get back up?
I think that's one of the largest fears. How did you deal with that?
That was at the time when I realized that, well, I wasn't excited about a third child on the way. And I said, well,
Okay.
it really can't get any worse. Right. So I pushed this off quite a bit, quite a while. And the other thing that I realized was that I didn't know what was on the other side. I trusted the guide I selected for it, which is, one part of it. And the other part is, with everything I had accomplished, with everything I had done, I still hadn't convinced myself that I was actually worth being where I was. So I figured, I don't really have all that much to lose now, because the life I'm living now, the performance I'm delivering now, isn't what I can do. So I'm gonna trust the process.
How did your life change, if at all?
Well, my divorce didn't break me. A lot of other things that happened since didn't break me. And I feel the pain now, like when something uncomfortable is going on. And I don't know, I've done more crying in the last 3 years than probably in the 30 years before that, right?
And it didn't break you.
No. And knowing that, I can look my clients in the eyes and say, I haven't been where you are, but I know you can do it. Like when I say it's going to get uncomfortable, I know what I'm talking about, right? And today, I am passionate about what I do. I absolutely love seeing what it creates for others. I enjoy the time freedom and flexibility it brings too. But most importantly, if we're really honest, heck, I get paid to continue learning every day.
That's a thing of beauty, isn't it? That feels so good.
Yep.
Is it fair to say, based on what you said, that none of us ever have the answer to what's on the other side? If you're sitting there in fear, worried about what if, the thing is, none of us can predict the answer. We've got a whole slew of things that we can say could happen. But to hold ourselves back out of the fear of what is potentially on the other side that could break us.
Well, it's
isn't that always holding ourselves back, right? We're never going to progress.
I would offer a reframe though on two things. What if is actually a good question. We're just usually asking it wrong. We're coming from what if it goes wrong? What if this happens?
Right.
What if that happens? Right? What if it goes right? What if it goes well? That's not how our brain works, but you can train yourself to do that. And right. And a lot of leaders who are really engaging and pulling, they will usually look at you and go, well, what if we do well, right?
Yeah.
Or failure is not an option, right? It's a mindset you can train. The other thing is, there will always be fear and doubt. But what if that was just a sign that two things are happening? One is, yes, you're leaving your comfort zone. The other is, and that's much more important, you're doing something that matters to you. Because if you didn't care, you wouldn't feel afraid.
You wouldn't feel afraid. Yeah.
And when you follow that line of thinking all the way down, then you realize that behind every fear is actually a desire.
Mm.
I was afraid of what I would find and what would happen if I broke. But what was stronger than that, though, was my desire to actually enjoy the life I live, whichever life that would be in the end. And I wasn't, right? To actually feel fulfilled in what I'm doing, and I wasn't.
What do you say to those who say it's selfish to think of myself? And I think now specifically of women or parents, right, who say, excuse me, I've got these people to think of, my time will come.
Yeah. I'm smiling because I do this all the time, especially when I work through money mindset issues with clients, right? It's shame around, I mean, I can spend money on my kids. I can spend money if I can justify it as a business investment. I can spend all kind of, but spending money just on myself, just doing something good for myself, oh, that's a big one, right?
That's selfish, boy. You can't do that.
Exactly. Truth, uncomfortable truth. As long as you put off taking care of yourself, you're not showing up fully for whoever you're using as an excuse to put yourself last, right?
Wait, now say that again. Whoever you're using as an excuse. That's uncomfortable.
To put yourself last.
Mm-hmm.
If it's your kids that you're putting first, think about what you're modeling for them. And is that really how you want them to live their life, right? There's no point in telling our kids what to do. There's no point in raising our kids with sermons or, good advice. They're still going to do whatever they saw us do.
Exactly.
Right? If it's your employees or your company you're putting first, then it's still the same thing. And it is your responsibility to take care of your most important asset. And that's you. It's your responsibility to decide how you spend your most valuable resource. That's not your money. That's your time, that's your energy, that's your attention.
Our kids, our employees, our families are often smarter than we give them credit for, or more intuitive. If they can't put a name to it, they can often feel that something is off with you. Mm-hmm. And as you said, the kids will learn to do the same because, obviously mom, dad are doing it, and employees will do the same, right? So
and to be fair, again, there is no judgment or blame here, because there's a lot of cultural upbringing. There's a lot of spoken and unspoken expectations. There's biological hardwiring. I violated quite a few of the things I talk about today when my kids were really young and little, because, add a little bit or a lot of sleep deprivation in the mix, and you get a whole game. So you said this, especially from the perspective of women, and now let's say like working women with children. Okay, you're already working 2 full-time jobs.
Thank you. Say it louder. It's true.
And unless you find a way to recharge, unless you find a way to put your oxygen mask on first, whatever image you want to apply here that helps you, you don't have enough to give to those you care for and you care about.
It feels just the opposite when you're in that role. It feels like if I let my guard down, it's just like you were describing earlier. If I let the emotion and I let my guard down, I say, oh, I'm going to take care of myself, everything will fall apart. And then what kind of parent am I?
Yeah, what kind of mother am I? What kind of father am I? What I mean, my personal one, full disclosure, when I started out my business, I was kind of dabbling in my business, but always trying to not put in too many hours and trying to get away from it so I could be present with my kids. But then when I was present with my kids, I was always still thinking about my business because I hadn't really been working on it to the right.
Yeah.
And one of my coaches called me out and he goes, so tell me what's the issue here? It's like, well, I feel like I can either build a successful business or I can be the father and husband I aspire to be. And he looked at me and goes, either or. How could you have both? Right? That was not a world I was living in. But that simple question opened up the process of looking at what is my story about, right? What does being successful in business mean, and why does that take away time from family? And sorting that out, it was okay. So how do I structure my time so that when I'm working on my business, I'm fully present and not feeling guilty, and so that when I leave my business, which for me, right, is shutting the door on my home office, I'm actually fully present. It's that simple shift in perspective that opened up, another 3 or 6 months before I had figured out my ideal schedule, my ideal week, and I still tweak it and twist it. But it took care of the guilt. If I may, one tidbit I share very often with my clients, and that is, if you feel frustrated often, if you feel exhausted, if you feel like you're always striving, do this little check for yourself. See what comes up. What does always do your best mean to you? And I think you and I might have had that in a coaching context before, Beth. So you know this, so right? Okay. So usually, if we're real honest, it means, well, don't slack off, don't do any less than your best. What it means for a lot of us too, though, is always do your best means strive for more, for better, more, this, more, that, more, this. Here's what happens when you expect, in a subtle way, more of yourself than your best, right? There's more isn't always doing your best, because your best varies. I mean, when I come home from a long day and I'm a bit worn and my kids have, a whiny request, I'll snap like that. When I slept real well and I'm making Sunday pancakes and they come with the same request, with the same whiny, with the same bickering and bitching among themselves, I'll smile it away, I'll distract them, right? My best varies from day to day, from hour to hour. Same in my business, same in all my relationships. Now, expecting myself to do more than my best in any given moment is setting myself up for failure, is adding insult to injury, is keeping this constant drive going. This is homemade when you can't unplug. There's reasons for it, but it's still self-inflicted by the stories that you have taken to be true about yourself, about others, about how the world works. We all do it. And when you get conscious about that, you can change the matrix you live in.
I was going to say,
and
that's
you can
when real change.
your reality. And that's what I work for. That's what I see. And that is the impact that I think good coaching creates in both the professional and the personal setting.
When you've experienced that change, professional or business or personal growth for yourself, who or what contributed to that?
As the mother of my children, and now my ex-wife, always used to say, for a coach, you suck at taking your own advice.
We do.
She was right. And there's some communication issues we used to have. But this is, yes, I'm a coach. And I can coach myself through some things, But what I said earlier holds true for me as well. When I want to go deeper, faster, I'll do it with someone else. Now, my advantage is that I have several good coaching friends that if it's a one-off, I can just call up and say, look, right? Sometimes what I do for actual self-help is I might even leave a voice note and just say, hey, I just need to vomit. And when I'm done, I'm saying, you can put the lid on that, just take it out. Okay. This works for things like you're nervous, I'm nervous before a call, or I procrastinate on something, right? I just vomit it out, put it away, and then get back to what I'm doing. If I know there's something struggling and I can't get to it, and then I sit down and say, hey, can you coach me? And we talked about this coming into this. Like right now, I actually got to the level where I manifested something that I had wanted to do for a long time. At the beginning of this year, I said, one of my favorite mentors is Rich Litvin. And if I have a chance to work with him live in terms of virtual in a group setting that doesn't break my bank, I'm going to take it. And it just so worked out that today I had my first group coaching session live with him. Right. So I have a budget for coaching because there's always something for me to work on and work through. And when I look at the big breakthrough moments, it's like the coach who asked me, how can you have both?
Before we wrap, what is your primary goal in your business, Sebastian, in helping others overcome their mindset and their internal dialogues? What do you want most?
Here's how I create impact. There's the direct impact on the person I work with, which is this still from this moment when I looked in the mirror and I said, wow, this is powerful. This is what I want to give to other people. And then there's another level of impact by virtue of working with other coaches, with founders, and with executives. And that is, it has a ripple effect, right? It affects every relationship that they're in, business as well as personally. And that is where I really come from. When I create the space to help leaders remember who they truly are, I help create something that leaves the world a better place.
One last thing. Is there anything, any little tip or thought you'd like to share, or any question that you thought I would ask that I didn't, that you wanted to address?
Not so much in terms of questions, because we don't do these conversations scripted. Let me think about like a nugget to share. I think it's this. When you find yourself coming up with good reasons for why this is not the time yet to do something, consider that whatever you still have to learn, whatever you still have to plan, whatever you have to first figure out just right, whatever your version of that is. See, as leaders, we don't procrastinate by sitting around and twiddling our thumbs or really mindlessly scrolling through social media, at least not most of the time. We procrastinate by being busy with other things. Yeah. So, right, when you have to still learn something, or any one of those things come up, just notice it and lean into this simple question. What am I afraid of? And then lean into that fear and decide, what do you want to do about it? Whether that's, reaching out for a coach to help you work through something, whether that is the project you meant to start for a long time, whether that's the conversation you could have had, should have had, would have had with that difficult employee weeks ago, it really doesn't matter. When you find yourself coming up with very plausible reasons for why this is not a good time, check where you doubt yourself and what you're afraid of. Just trust me that 19 out of 20 cases, it's not about that you don't know how. Right? It's the self-protective mechanism that deflects from the fear and from the doubt. If that's the one thing you take from it, that usually we're just afraid to do what we know to do, then I think you've taken the biggest insight from that. And then the world is your oyster and it's up to you what you're going to do about it.
And done with consistency, it builds a phenomenal habit, and you're retraining your brain on how to think and how to feel when those scenarios come up again. So what am I afraid of? How's it make me feeling? And what do I want to do about it?
Exactly.
Sebastian, I knew that you would have so many gems to share with us today. I love everything about you, your countenance, how you articulate what you do and what's happening in our minds. Thank you so much for your time today. Where can our listeners find you online?
The easiest is probably on LinkedIn, and maybe we'll share just the link to the Chief Mindsetter profile. If you want to be inspired, I can share the link to sign up for my newsletter as well. And then every Saturday you get a bit of a mindset hack just to take your business to the next level, or a reflection question or something along those lines. And if this conversation resonates, whether it's for yourself or for your team, let's connect on LinkedIn, have a conversation, and just see what's going on.
There you go, everybody. Wise words from say your name in German again. I like it so much better than my way.
Sebastian Kölner.
Oh, it's beautiful. Thank you again so much.
Your mental plumber, right?
Your mental plumber. That's right. Thank you again, Sebastian, and I will see y'all on the next episode of Illuminating Leadership. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Well, guys, that's a wrap. My guests and I can't thank you enough for your support and helping us kick off this podcast in a big way during season 1. I hope you'll join us for season 2, starting June 15th, where we will explore the new workplace and the challenges it holds for both leaders and employees. We'll also shine a light on some not so great business and leadership practices that could be hindering many companies' growth and success today. Stay tuned for that. And if you like what you've been hearing, please head over to patreon.com/Illuminating Leadership and subscribe for some amazing membership benefits and rewards. Last but not least, if you have something to say or have a story, experience, or opinion you want to share, go to il-podcast.com, complete the contact form, choose I want to be a guest, and I'll be in touch. Thanks again, everybody. I'll see you in season 2.